All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. The copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
How weak are you on TV complaining about tuna and noodles? I'm sorry. You volunteered to serve your country. You can come back, get out of the military, and do like all of these Democrat veterans and complain about it and make commercials and be a sellout if you want to.
For U.S. service members aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, the food situation is getting worse by the day. And for many of them, it is no longer just about bad food, but about not getting enough to eat at all. New images released this morning show just how serious things have become. One tray appears to have nothing more than a single skewer and a small serving of rice. Another looks like some kind of mush with 2 eggs. And that is all. According to a family member who spoke to Newsweek, the shortage has become so severe that one service member has already lost 17 pounds during deployment. U.S. military personnel are reportedly rationing food right now aboard carriers in the Middle East. And this is not just being reported on the Abraham Lincoln. Similar concerns are now being raised on the Tripoli as well. That is what makes this situation so alarming, because with the war still ongoing, packages cannot easily be sent into the region either. That means service members are not even able to rely on care packages from home, supplies are running low, conditions are getting worse, and far more people should be paying attention to it. Spread the word and stay tuned, because there may be even more updates very soon.
Our sailors cannot get food, but Trump wants $1 trillion for battleships that look cool. Sit with that for a second. 200 family members packed a room in San Diego last week and confronted Navy leadership because their husbands and wives and kids have been stuck on aircraft carriers for as long as 326 days. Moldy showers, broken toilets, sewage on the floor, and food. So bad sailors described it as unidentifiable meat nuggets. And when families said this out loud, the Trump administration called them liars about their own children's living conditions. The USS Gerald Ford caught fire in its laundry room, destroyed somewhere between 600 and 1,000 beds. Sailors slept on the floor with no sheets, and it barely made it to Greece for repairs. The George H.W. Bush had to sail all the way around Africa because the Red Sea was too dangerous. That is not strength. That is a fleet that cannot guarantee its own safety anymore. Mail is not reaching these ships because Iran hit the port in Bahrain, so families cannot even send care packages. And what is the fix Navy leadership offered these grieving spouses? Nothing. Just wait for the Theodore Roosevelt, which will not even be ready until December, so sailors already out there for months will hit the 400-day mark before relief shows up. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth's big morale strategy is doing low flyovers over beaches, and he actually said on camera that the flyovers will continue until morale improves. Not food, not working plumbing, flyovers. Then the acting Navy secretary sent out a memo right before this town hall, lecturing sailors about haircuts, uniforms, and professionalism. Sailors sleeping on floors covered in sewage got a memo about their appearance. And this is the same administration asking for $1.5 trillion, because apparently what the Navy needs in an era of drones and unmanned submersibles is old-school battleships, because that is the aesthetic Trump likes. Not working showers for the people already serving battleships. So explain the logic to me. You cannot feed the sailors you already have. You cannot keep the mail running. You cannot even guarantee a safe route through the Red Sea. But you have $1 trillion for ships built to look tough. Which part of that sounds like a plan and which part sounds like a costume? Tell me in the comments, would you send your kid to serve on a ship that cannot keep the toilets working for months at a time?
Iran has doubled down on its declaration of victory in the Middle East war, offering a $30,000 bounty for killed or captured US soldiers. It comes hours after Iran said they had achieved victory over the US and Israel, vowing to continue their resistance. The struggle for dominance in the Strait of Hormuz continues, Iran warning the reopening of the waterway will depend on the US upholding the agreement signed in June.
The U.S. Army has been declared an international terrorist organization by the Iranian government, and now the Iranian government's offering $30,000 or 5 billion tomans to any Iranian citizen who captures a member of the American military, dead or alive. If a woman captures or kills a member of the U.S. military, they will receive $60,000 or 10 billion tomans. Now, there is no known deployment of U.S. troops inside Iran other than the April rescue mission of the 2 downed aviators. But that still doesn't lead us to believe that there hasn't been some sort of special forces mission inside Iranian territory. We do know that the ceasefire agreement between the United States and Iran is swiftly coming to an end, with neither side looking like they're willing to extend it. And even if one side wanted to, both sides have to agree. The talks between them have been stalled now for over 6 weeks, and it appears there will be no lasting peace between the United States and Iran.
What Iran is doing right now is kind of off the wall. So what they're doing is offering a reward to anyone who ends the life of or captures an American service member. But if you're a woman who does that, you get more money. So Iran's military announced that it will pay the equivalent of about $30,000 for every American service member captured or ended and handed over to the Iranian authorities. But if a woman does it, they're offering double the money, about $60,000. Iranian Army Chief Amir Hatami announced the bounty on Sunday, which is today, and claims the plan was actually created after receiving a quote-unquote large number of requests from people who apparently wanted to participate. Now, Hatami didn't exactly explain where he expects people to carry this out, and that's important because currently there are no known American ground forces operating inside Iran, but there are tens of thousands of American service members stationed throughout the Middle East, and tensions between Iran and the United States obviously remain extremely, extremely high. Hatami also repeated Iran's demand that American forces leave the region and declared that the U.S. is no longer does have permission to enter the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, or the Strait of Hormuz. Oh, and apparently Iran is even talking about eventually creating a museum where weapons used to kill American troops could be put on display. Anyways, considering how many American troops are currently stationed throughout that region, I'm very curious to see how the U.S. responds to this. As always, drop your thoughts below. Follow for updates. This is just getting more and more insane every day.
To understand the situation better, we are now joined from London by former Iranian diplomat and veteran political analyst Dr. Mehrad Konsori. Dr. Konsori, thank you and welcome to Asia One News. Many thanks for joining us, sir. So, Dr. Konsori, the U.S. Memorandum of Understanding, US-Iran Memorandum of Understanding, expired on Monday. So with little signs of either side willing to extend it and both accusing the other of violations. So who bears more responsibility, in your opinion, for its collapse? On what happens next?
Well, I think it's very complicated to say who bears responsibility as both sides accuse one another. The reality is that the Memorandum of Understanding was pronounced dead by President Trump some weeks ago. But nevertheless, the Memorandum of Understanding is very much alive. As your own correspondent just mentioned, the fact is that both sides want the ceasefire to continue. Now, and both sides desperately want to have a situation where they don't have to resume military hostilities and reach an agreement. President Trump needs this matter to be dealt with and over with as soon as possible. The Iranian government, given its huge domestic economic problems and the fact that right now they're facing fuel shortage inside Iran, they want this matter to be ended as quickly as possible. So efforts are underway behind the scenes, much more than what we see visibly, in trying to reach some kind of a compromise. So I think the reality is that while the Memorandum of Understanding may no longer be in force as we speak, but what it intended, in other words, discussions over the fate of the Strait of Hormuz and the Iranian nuclear fight, is very much alive, and I think that is what the mediators are pushing for behind the scenes.
And Foreign Minister Araghchi says Tehran has not yet made a decision when it comes to negotiations, to restart the negotiations with Washington. So while Qatari and Pakistani mediators continue exchanging messages with Iran, so is Tehran holding out for better terms, or is that a genuine stalemate?
Well, again, it is a combination of all that, plus, in addition to what you just said, the fact that there is a huge power struggle going on between various factions inside Iran. The faction that Mr. Araghchi and Mr. Ghalibaf and the president of Iran represent wants to have direct negotiations, wants to try to end this matter as swiftly as possible. But the dogmatists, the hardliners, are against this, and they have to maneuver their movements in such a way that they can sort of fend any trouble coming to them, to their existence inside Iran. At the same time that there are things that still need to be worked out. But the fact is that ultimately Mr. Araghchi knows that nothing will come to an end unless there is direct talks with the United States and a compromise reached with the help of the mediators. So I think they're just jousting at this stage, knowing that ultimately there is no other option.
And Trump has now offered compensation for the past, what he called misdeeds. So as a new condition for talks, so after Tehran said U.S. compensation would be required to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, so is there any realistic path through the process?
I don't think there is anything realistic about what President Trump has suggested. Obviously, Iran and the United States, while they are sort of jousting publicly and posturing, they come up with these huge demands, excessive demands, both of them. But they both know that the compromise that will eventually be reached will be something realistic and doable, and this is just part of the, you might say, the activities that goes on prior to serious issues being discussed and worked out. I wouldn't give too much credence to what President Trump had said, and he might himself change his view very shortly once he sees there's another direction that is opening up.
Vice President J.D. Vance recently narrowed Washington's war goals to just 2. So keeping Gulf oil and gas flowing and ensuring Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. So a notable scale back from earlier talks of regime change. So does that shift, do you think, appears as a genuine diplomatic opening?
I think so. I think that this is a very clear and very concise, you might say, categorization of what needs to be achieved. The United States' main interest is to secure that the Strait of Hormuz is opened and that the Iranian nuclear program is contained or eliminated in one way or another for a temporary period of time. This is what the Iranians also want. The question is that other issues are supplement, and everything now needs to focus on bringing this about. And these 2 issues, which J.D. Vance has spoken of, which is critical to U.S. interest and to President Trump and J.D. Vance's political constituency in the United States that does not want never-ending wars in the Middle East, This is something that the mediators have to pick up and work upon, and this is where I think the Iranians will ultimately, sort of concede and try to work in reaching some sort of an acceptable agreement. This is something that I think is realistic, and J.D. Vance has narrowed it down and tried to stay away from propaganda and, you might say, sound bites that don't really mean anything.
Many thanks, Dr. Konsari, indeed, for your time.